Note that this is the last of his healings before he goes to the cross. And the last of his healings is healing someone that one of his followers hurt. And I think that he's probably still doing that today. As we go around, we might be hurting other people in the name of Jesus. We might be bashing them over the head with the Bible, if you will. Or maybe other Christians, because they don't see things the way we do. And so we might try to scuttle their faith or something. Good morning. Welcome back to Shasta Valley Christian Fellowship. We're in Luke 22 today. This is part 2. The first part of this, Jesus and the disciples were having the Passover, and that's where Jesus tells Peter that he's going to disown him. Peter adamantly objects to that. We're going to see he actually ends up disowning him. We're starting with verse 39, and verse 39 to 46 is Jesus' prayer in the garden. Verses 47 through 53, Jesus is going to get arrested. Then 54 through 62, Peter's going to disown him. And then 63 through 71, I put the sham trial starts, because this trial was not following any legal precedents that they had at the time. He ends up going through 6 different trials, but we just see the first one starting here in chapter 22. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. Luke 22, starting verse 39. The NIV titles this Jesus Prays on the Mount of Olives. Verse 39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so you will not fall into temptation." I can stop there. Any questions before we turn to it? Okay. So Jesus went out as usual. This is something that's very routine for him, is to go out and pray. He takes along 3 of his guys, though. And apparently this is a fairly common or well-known place to them, because it's the place. It's not the way he words it, it's the place. So he tells the disciples, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." That should be something that we should all be doing. I mean, granted, this was a special night. Jesus is actually being tempted with something here. He's being tempted to flee from his duty. But the disciples are all going to be tempted that night as well. And they're all going to take off running, with the exception of John. But if we're praying regularly, you'll find that the temptations aren't as strong. Temptations to fall into sin, to do something you're not supposed to, they're not as strong. They're not as tempting. Your focus is on God, and it's not on whatever the sin might be, whatever your temptation might be. Verse 41, he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them and knelt down and prayed. This is not an exact measurement. It's just saying he went a little ways off. It's a euphemism. However far you can throw a stone. And Luke, it gives us a very quick treatment. As you saw with the Ray Vanderland video, Jesus was in some distress over this. He's praying, "Father, if you're willing to take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Yeah, it's what he's about to take on is something that I don't think any of us would ever want.
You think of the wrath of God pouring out. We think of, for me, I'm thinking like, when earthquakes and tornadoes and fires and big things come. Not that those are the wrath of God, but then death. It was big. It wasn't little.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole world for all time.
Yeah, this isn't just a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
There's some majors going on.
Plus, it's like we have enough trouble of our own just with our own sin.
Yeah.
Just imagine taking on 10 other people's sin. Now
Yeah.
multiply that by billions of people.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking that this morning. If I get a ticket for speeding, it's probably because I deserved it. But if I'm like watching the speed limits every day and do my best to stay under them, and I get a ticket, I'd be so upset. But if I get a ticket, yeah, I deserve it.
You don't have to worry about that.
No. So his disciples are asleep. One of the other gospels tells us that Jesus actually goes over and wakes them up like 3 different times, and they just can't stay awake. They're tired. Luke says it's from sorrow. It's late at night. They've had a big meal. Well, not a real big meal, but they've had a long day, and they're wiped out. So what happens is God sends an angel from heaven to appear to him and strengthen him.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's verse 43.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even hear that.
Mm-hmm. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly. So Jesus is asking God to take this cup from him. God sends an angel to encourage him. Like, you can do this. You got this. And he prays more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. There's 2 different ways that I've really heard this explained. Side 1 says he was sweating so profusely that the water drops were coming off almost like blood clots. They're just huge drops of water pouring off of him. The other side says, well, he was under so much stress that the capillaries, it's called hematosis, the capillaries in his sweat glands were rupturing, and so he's literally sweating blood. I don't want to get too hung up on that, other than we can draw away from it that he was definitely stressed, and he was doing this fervent prayer. By the way, it is not hot that night. It's very cool because when he gets arrested, Peter's going to go to a fire. He's going to sit by a fire to kind of stay warm.
What month is the Passover?
It was the same as our Easter.
Oh, okay.
And isn't that desert country over there too, where it gets cold at night?
Yeah. Really, I think it's pretty close to our climate, actually. But verse 45. When he rose from the prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so you will not fall into temptation. Yeah, like I said before, if we were spending more time in prayer, we would spend less time in temptation.
And isn't that what Jesus prayed to God for us, that we wouldn't be taken out of the world?
Right.
That we would be kept from temptation.
Another thing you might notice too, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but if you sit down and start reading the Bible, or maybe you're getting into your prayer, something is usually like trying to get your attention. It could be your phone's ringing, some thought pops into your mind, it takes your focus off. Maybe you fall asleep. Those are all tools, if you will, that Satan uses to keep us from talking with God. Because when we're reading the Bible, we're hearing from him. When we're praying, we're talking to him, right? And Satan will use whatever he can to keep that from happening, to break that line of communication and wreck that relationship. All right, let's move on to Jesus gets arrested. While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priest, 52. Then Jesus said to the chief priests the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him. Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts. You did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns. So what's going on here? Last time we were in Luke, we talked about Judas going out to betray Jesus, right? Well, he's got his chance now. Jesus is alone, basically, if you guys, and he brings the temple guard in to arrest him. It is interesting, though, that he betrays them with this kiss of friendship. In that culture, you greeted your friends with, the little double kiss on the cheek thing. And that's what he did.
I like is it Mark's version? That where it said Jesus, I can't remember what word he said, but he said one word and power went out from him and they all fell down.
I'm thinking John?
Is it John? Yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
So he went on his own accord. He
I'll
said
put that
yes.
on YouTube. Yeah, they said, he goes, who are you looking for, or something like that, and they said, Jesus Nazareth, and he goes, I am he, and they all just like,
Yeah, power, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know why every one of those don't have that, because it's so cool.
So they get interrupted. So when Jesus' followers, verse 49, saw that what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Any guesses on which servant that, or which follower that was?
Peter, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ambitious, obnoxious, not obnoxious, but yeah. Peter, he's always up to doing,
And he misses, right? He misses and got his.
kind of. Apparently, he was not the swordsman; he was a fisherman.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah. But Peter's got a lot going on in his mind right now too, because just a couple hours ago, Jesus told him he's going to betray him. So this could be his reaction. It's like, no, I'm going to show Jesus. I'm going to be right there with you to the death. But he's trying to do it in his own power, basically. He has no clue what's really going on. They're still looking for this Messiah that's going to lead them out from under Roman's occupation. So he whips out a sword, takes a swing at the servant. The servant's name, by the way, is Malchus. We know that from one of the other Gospels. I think it was John too. Yeah, I keep trying to picture this. Like, how do you swing a sword and hit somebody on the right ear? I'm guessing maybe when Peter swung, Malchus kind of went like that and must like graze down his head or something. Again, probably don't need to get hung up on that. Verse 51, depending on what version you have, it might say something a little different. It says, but Jesus answered, no more of this. Yours might say something, suffer this a little longer.
Suffer ye thus far.
Yeah, suffer thee thus far.
I said stop this.
Yeah. Basically, he's saying we don't need the violence. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Note that this is the last of his healings before he goes to the cross. And the last of his healings is healing someone that one of his followers hurt. And I think that he's probably still doing that today. As we go around, we might be hurting other people in the name of Jesus. We might be bashing them over the head with the Bible, if you will. Or maybe other Christians because they don't see things the way we do. And so we might try to scuttle their faith or something.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What the college kids are doing when they're going up against Israel, is that kind of like blasphemy? I mean, they're totally against.
What you got going on there is you have two groups that are listening to two different voices, if you will. And this group that is against Israel is listening to one side that's talking about Israel burning babies. Literally, I saw that pop up on a post this morning. And they're seeing all these crimes, and they're making Israel out to be this horrible monster. And so this one side is seeing in that, and they're wanting to, one of the United States to stop Israel. The other side is seeing Israel's side of it, how they were doing anything, and they got bombed, and they're trying to put an end to this war.
Hamas came in
Right.
and killed babies.
So one side isn't hearing that part of it, and that's why we're getting this clash. people are listening to two different sides, and there's no communication in the middle. So whether it's blasphemy,
I mean, that's gotta
Yeah.
hurt God to see that.
oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's a good question. But yeah, it's a messed up situation. That's all I can say about it. Because both sides think they're doing right, and it's just going to lead to more conflict. We really need Jesus to step in and put an end to that too. Let's see. Yeah. So he touched the man's ear, and like I said, Jesus is still doing this today, because we'll inadvertently sometimes, maybe on purpose, we'll hurt somebody spiritually. He'll come in and clean up the mess. I remember many years ago, I was going to have, it was like an arranged meeting with me and a couple of guys that I was going to church with and a couple of cultists. And I had done a bunch of research on their cult, if you will. It was a Christian cult, but still. My plan was to go in there and totally scuttle their beliefs, just sink their ship and then pick up the survivors. That's what my plan was. I had done all my research. I knew everything that was wrong with their religion. That night I had a dream, and in the dream I was out hunting. I saw this really nice buck running, and I pulled up on it, and I went to shoot, and when I did, there was this guy standing in the crosshairs, and an older guy next to him, and when I pulled the trigger, of course, hit the guy, he drops down, the older guy looks down, and what I got from that dream was, what you're about to do is going to cause so much harm to someone that they will spiritually not recover from it. And I showed up to the meeting. I told my friends, like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I told them what was going on. I said, I'm just going to sit here. I'd never met this person before. He shows up. He is the exact same young guy that was in my dream.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, I hear you, Lord. I'm not. It's a different tact. But we can get into that. We get so zealous for our faith that we can end up hurting other people's and theirs. So, verse 52. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple, the guard, and the elders who had come to them, am I leading a rebellion? Why did you come at me with an army? There was no need for this. But the hour is yours. He knows that the hour has come for him to be turned over and be abused and crucified. Let's go on to verse 54. Peter's going to disown Jesus. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he's a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him, "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. Any questions on that one? All right. I know I'm kind of blowing through these. Hopefully you guys are absorbing something. So what's going on? They grab him, they take him down to the house of, it says, the high priest. There's actually two different high priests. It can get confusing. They have one that was deposed or removed, if you will, by Rome, and another guy was put into his place. But they still look to the first guy for their leadership. But the other guy was there symbolically, so they had to go to him too. And the reason I call this a sham trial, they weren't supposed to, according to their own texts, their Talmud, they weren't supposed to have a trial at night, and it's something that could have a death sentence. The priest, the high priest, was never to cross-examine a witness or examine a witness. There's a few other things in their own rules that they're breaking to have this trial, and they are trying to speed this thing through. They want to go have him crucified before Passover, which is like the next morning. So Peter's following at a distance. He hasn't quite panicked and ran yet. He sits down at a fire. Some little servant girl says, "Hey, you're with him." And Peter's like, "No, I don't know him." That tells you kind of how afraid he was. Even the servant, he's afraid to admit to a servant girl that he was with him. Another person says, "Yeah, you are." How do you think they knew that he was a Galilean?
Maybe the way he was dressed or his accent.
Probably, yeah. I'm thinking accent, but dress could be a way too. I mean, in our own country, if someone comes up, we can tell that they're from a different part of the country. They start talking, y'all, or they start talking like they're from New York, whatever. Yeah, we know the difference when around here, and they know when I go back east or down south, they know that I'm not from there either. So, my little niece, who's about yay tall, I was talking one day, and she looks at me kind of funny. She goes, "Y'all talk funny,
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. It's like, you should listen to yourself, but no, I'm in your place, so yeah, no, it's you're right. I talk funny. Another thing about this denial, all four Gospels record it. That tells me that God wants us to be aware of it. And I don't think it's so much about the denial as in the restoration. Even though Peter publicly denied Jesus, he is still going to restore him. So it should give us hope if if we've ever been in a case where we've denied Jesus or something, that doesn't mean that we've just lost our salvation. There's restoration. So yeah, he's got to be close enough to Jesus that Jesus can look directly at him. So it was an open courtyard where they were doing this first trial. Moving on to verse 63, the guards mock Jesus. I put this into the sham trial part. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy, who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. Luke doesn't cover a whole lot of this. They did more to him. They did the whole crown of thorns thing.
They gave him a royal robe type thing.
Yeah, I think Luke actually says that Herod did that.
Herod?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Anyway, keep going on to verse 66. At daybreak, the council of the elders and the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." Yeah, they're looking for any excuse to get him crucified. And part of it, Jesus challenged their authority, but he also challenged their pocketbooks because he was always disrupting stuff at the temple with the money changers and that sort of thing. They had a lot of, you can call them reasons. They weren't good reasons, but they had a lot of reasons to hate him. And that brings us to the end of 22. Do you guys have any other questions on 22? I know I kind of sped through that, but nope. All right. So closing out the chapter, we saw that Jesus goes out to pray. He prays his fervent prayer. He gets arrested. And now we're starting into a sham trial. And then The rest of that we'll pick up in chapter 23 here in a couple weeks. All right, thanks, guys. And bye, YouTube.